Okay, it is 6 o'clock. I will now call this regularly scheduled Shawnee Mission School District Board of Public Education meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. I'll seek a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. Is there a second?
Second, Hembry.
Thank you, Ms. Hembry. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
You know what? I'm just going to check. Jamie, are you still on? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't
I
hear.
was on mute.
You were on mute? Okay. I just didn't hear your aye, so I wanted to make sure you were there. Do you have an aye on that?
Yes,
okay.
aye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the special meeting on October 25th. Can I seek a motion to approve?
Move approval, Sinclair.
Is there a second?
Second, Guy.
Thank you, Reverend Guy. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Unanimously. Item 1.4, approval of minutes, special public meeting, October 25th, 2021. I'll seek a motion to approve.
Move approval, Sinclair.
Second, Goodburn.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And item 1.5, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting, October 25th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So
Move
moved.
approval.
We'll go with Mr. Stratton on that one for the motion and Ms. Hembry for the second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And once again, unanimous. Next item on our agenda is the Superintendent Report, so we will turn it over to Dr. Hubbard.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by wishing everyone a very happy American Education Week. As a district, we're taking some extra time this week to show our appreciation for everyone who serves in support of keeping SMSD strong. The National Education Association was one of the originators of this week of celebration. The NEA called for a week to be observed annually for the purpose of raising awareness of the accomplishments of public schools and for securing support of the public in meeting public school needs. We invite all in our community to honor all educators and support for professionals who are working relentlessly to support student learning, especially this year. Each day we have ways for all of SMSD to join in this celebration, and we'll include a link in the recap to some ideas to join in the spirit of the week. Thank you to the Shawnee Mission team for overcoming challenges and dedicating yourselves to ensure quality education for all of our students in Shawnee Mission. We're excited to introduce the first district-wide digital art show of the school year. This presentation features artwork from students in pre-K through 12th grade from across the district. We are so grateful for all the students and educators for sharing the work of so many talented artists. We also thank Megan Ellis, Visual Arts Coordinator, for her work to make this digital art show possible. We will also include a link in the recap to the digital art show. We are proud of Shawnee Mission High School students who this fall earned top honors at a math day held at Emporia State University. We had teams from Shawnee Mission North, Shawnee Mission Northwest, and Shawnee Mission West earn top scores in geometry, algebra, and a math scramble category. Maya Roth from Shawnee Mission North took first place in geometry, and Christopher Ramsey from Shawnee Mission Northwest earned second place. This was a competition that drew more than 400 students from across Kansas, so well done, mathletes. Keep up that great work. We are so excited to have two teams headed to the first ever Kansas State High School Activities Association State Championship. Shawnee Mission East Unified Bowlers were named regional champions, and Shawnee Mission South's team earned 5th place in a spot in the state state competition. This is the first year for Unified Bowling to be part of KSHA. This sport combines students who have disabilities with those who do not have disabilities on the same team to compete. All 5 of our high schools competed this year, and we are thrilled for the opportunity it provided for all of the athletes' success. I also want to highlight that Shawnee Mission South was named to ESPN's Special Olympics Honor Roll for 2021. They are among only 25 named across the country. This honor recognizes schools that promote meaningful social inclusion by bringing students with and without disabilities to compete and for how they create accepting school environments. In addition to bowling, Shawnee Mission South also has unified bocce and basketball competitors, and unified athletes are involved in numerous activities and events in the school community. Congratulations to Shawnee Mission South for this amazing recognition. So we're about to wrap up fall athletics season, and I congratulate all of our athletes and coaches on an outstanding fall. Best of luck to everyone who is kicking off winter sports this week. Michelle Langton, who teaches in a structured learning classroom at Broken Arrow Elementary, was honored for how she makes our community a better place as a Blue KC Sporting Samaritan. She was nominated by a parent who said she always goes above and beyond for students. Langton was honored on the field at Children's Mercy Park and was treated to a VIP experience at Sporting KC game. And lastly, I invite Todd Dane, principal at Shawnee Mission South, who is here tonight to introduce us to our Shawnee Mission All-Star.
So thank you, Dr. Hubbard. I am so excited to recognize Diane Johnson as our All Shawnee Mission School District All-Star for this month. Diane is our receptionist at Shawnee Mission South High School, and anyone that's walked in the door knows Diane. She is the heart and soul of our building, and she is so ingrained in everything that we do. If any time that you attend a play, a performance, a basketball game, a football game, Diane is there. And she is invested in what we are and what we do, and she welcomes everyone with a bolstering personality and voice every time somebody comes in the room. And so we have an amazing video here that highlights all the things that Diane does for us better than I can, but I want to recognize Diane Johnson as our All-Star.
Diane is one of the most important people we have here at South.
She loves her job and she loves the people that she works with. Every time you talk to Diane, you're going to end up leaving with a smile on your face because she's going to always make your day a little bit brighter.
She just exudes love and care for the people around her.
Diane and I started 7 years ago here at South, and she is the hub of South.
She knows that it takes a village to run a school, and so we're all in it together, and she knows that she's here for the kids, she's here for the teachers, she's here for everybody.
She helps out in every single corner of Shawnee Mission South High School and even off campus. I mean, she's at events, she does everything. It's no surprise at all to me that 30, 40, 50 people nominated Diane Johnson for this award.
We talk about all sorts of stuff. We've managed to bond over our cats. She has some really silly cats, and I also have a cat of my own, so we always talk about them. I just really like her, and she's made my experience here for the last 4 years great. I'm glad I got to know her.
I think that her attitude and her spirit of positivity is so contagious that if you're greeted by Diane at the beginning of your day is going to go great.
And I think that is really special to find in someone and really special to have in a school, in that role, in a position that sees everyone.
She deserves the All-Star Award because she is the face of Shawnee Mission South.
Hey Diane, congratulations, you've earned it, you're great.
Congratulations, Diane. You are so deserving of this award, and I love working with you and can't wait to continue working with you.
Alf Mabruk, 1,000 congratulations, Diane.
Congratulations, Diane. I'm so excited for you to receive this award. You are so wonderful.
Congratulations, Diane. We are so excited for you. You are so deserving of this award.
Diane, congratulations on winning this award. I can't think of anybody that deserves this award more than you do. Congratulations.
You've worked so hard for this. You deserve it. I'm so proud of you, and I know the South is so proud of you as well.
So now that means y'all have to come visit us at South if you haven't been there before.
This year marks the 20th year that I've either been a volunteer at one of the district schools or worked in the district. This is a great district, hands down, and the community at South is the most awesome place. They are my heart and soul too. So thank you for this. I accept this on behalf of all the fabulous people I work with at South. They are amazing. Thank you very much.
Does that conclude your report, Dr. Hubbard?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. We will move on to board report items. Ms. Borgman, do you have a report for us from SMAC?
Nothing new to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Embry, do you have a report for us from the Education Foundation?
I was just going to note this is a good time for sort of end of year giving, and Shawnee Mission Education Foundation has some new swag for anyone who gives over $25. So this is a good time, if you've been meaning to make a donation, to go ahead and do it.
What is the swag?
You'll have to give $25 to find out. It's a car cling.
I mean, I'm in for the 25. I was just curious. Okay, thank you. Reverend Guy, do you have an update for us from the KASB Board of Directors?
I do. All sorts of things have been happening in the KASB world. As you remember, our last board meeting, we talked about the two candidates to become the president of the KASB board. And then the election happened, and one of those candidates, Laura Bors, was not reelected, and so she withdrew her name for the KSB presidency. And so Art Gutierrez was elected to that position unanimously, and he'll be an awesome president. That happened last week at the KSB annual conference, which was held here in Overland Park at the Overland Park Convention Center. Most of the board was able to attend, and our incoming board member, April Boyd-Nerona, was able to attend as well. Lots and lots of workshops, inspiring speakers, lots of wonderful things happen. I will just highlight two of the breakout sessions that were facilitated by SMSD people. One of them, Shelby Rebeck, our health coordinator, talked about the dangers of vaping for students. And this is something that had been on our radar pre-pandemic, and then kind of all the focus turned to keeping students safe from COVID, and we kind of stopped talking and thinking about vaping, but vaping is still, of course, happening in our schools and in students' homes. And so I really appreciated what Shelby had to say. I learned a lot. I thought I already kind of knew what was happening. But there are new developments all the time. So I encourage parents and teachers of middle school and high school students to learn more about vaping, and they can do that on the Kansas Department of Health site, has some links about vaping. So that was very informational. And then Heather Owsley and Chief Ben Barnes talked about our process of changing our policy around mascots. And that was very well attended, and we had some great interaction and questions from the people that were there. It was also wonderful to get to hear more from Chief Barnes about what that change in the mascot policy meant to him and the people that he represents. So that was wonderful to have Shawnee Mission so well represented there. And then in other KSB news, when we got home from that convention, we got an email, the board got an email that night that John Heim, who's been the executive director of KASB, was tapped to become the new executive director of NSBA, which is the National School Board Association. And he has accepted that position. That's especially exciting for us in Kansas because not only will one of our own now be in charge of the National Association, but as you may know, Frank Henderson is I think going to become the new president of the NSBA board, I think this spring at their national. So anyway, two Kansans are going to be in charge of the National School Board Association, and so I think that will be very well represented by both of those people. Although we were sad to lose John Heim, and the board did meet via Zoom this week and confirmed that Brian Jordan, who was deputy, executive is our choice to take over the helm as new executive director. So Brian has been serving with Dr. Heim, I think all 10 years or so that they've been there together. So he was well-suited to step into that role, and then the search will begin for the new deputy at KASB. So lots of things happening, lots of wonderful things to be together again in person and hear inspiring speakers and go to great workshops and breakout sessions. And then some changes in the leadership of KASB, but I think it's all going to be great for us and the state of Kansas. And so that is my report. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sinclair, do you have an update for us from the KASB Legislative Committee?
I do. So the committee met at the end of the KASB convention, so we met on Sunday afternoon and finalized the drafts to both the state Kansas Association of School Boards platform, so the state resolution for the legislative session starting in January, as well as the federal set of federal resolutions. And those will be presented to the delegate assembly on December 16th for a final vote, and I believe, Reverend Guy, that you are our delegate for that. So I did forward those to you all. They're also available on the KASB website, so if there's any additional input. The changes that were made were pretty minor in the meeting. So.
Thank you. Ms. Goodburn, I believe your duties with the nominating committee are done, but do you have an update for us on the policy review committee?
Nothing other than we have a meeting scheduled for Monday, December 6th at 3:30.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Stratton, do you have an update for us from the Finance and Facilities Committee?
No update tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. That concludes our board reports. The next item on our agenda is the board financial report, so I will turn it over to Dr. Hubbard and Mr. Resniak for the financial report.
Thank you. So tonight we have 3 reports that Mr. Knapp is going to discuss, but our monthly board report and then our SR2 expenditure report today, and then a funding update based on our September 20th enrollment. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard. Good evening. Yes, like Dr. Hubbard said, we have 3 reports. 2 of them, one is the October board report, and then we added a SR2 update. We'll just keep that going to give you an update on that spending. I wanted to spend my time going over the funding for operating funds. As you are aware, our funding is based on our weightings at September 20th. KSD auditors concluded their visit last week and gave us our results, and that's what you see on the screen. It is based on the weightings, and the head count is still based on the higher of the 2 priors, so there's no impact there on the head count. The results are showing that right now it's about $3.1 million less in general state aid versus what we budgeted for this year, and then an additional $1 million in our LOB spending authority. So between our general fund and our LOB fund, we will be down roughly about $4.2 million. Most of that comes in the at-risk line. As you are aware, that all lunches, all meals are free this year. So parents were required to fill out a home economic survey. And if your lunch is free, there's just not a lot of incentive for parents to complete that. And the state is still basing our at-risk status on that home economic survey. So there's about $1.8 million in that at-risk line for the Shawnee Mission School District. And then in addition, the transportation is going to be about $1.1 million less than what we budgeted. So with that being said, that's about $4.2 million. We again think that with the number of vacancies that we have this year, very similar to what we did last year, if those remain unfilled, we think the annualized cost for those vacancies will exceed that $4.2 million and offset that revenue loss. And so with that, concludes my report, and I'll just, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Reverend Guy?
I know that some of the positions that have not been filled, we're having to pay overtime, I know, for some of our custodial staff, but we're still coming under on our staffing expenses, even though we're having to pay overtime on some of them? I just was
Well,
curious about that.
Some of the, I think maybe what you're referring to, we hired some outside contracting services, and we're using ESSER monies to fill those. So that would be custodial, nurse, and some sped positions as well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Dr. Sinclair?
I'm not sure if this is for Dr. Hubbard or Mr. Knapp. Can you please just explain the relationship between the staffing for 507 and the staffing in relation to enrollment? So if we have a declining enrollment that does, not specifically, but just generally. I mean, I think
Are you looking for the explanation as to why the 5 of 7 initiative isn't going to be impacted?
Oh, 5? I thought you said 5.07, and I was like, I'm not seeing the correlation.
Sorry.
So, yes, absolutely. So 5 of teachers at the secondary level that would have been teaching 6 that would now be teaching 5, we have budgeted for that, and this will not impact that. Is that your question?
Right.
Yes.
And so enrollment then just determines the total number of teachers you would hire.
That's correct.
Whether it goes up or down.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask the clarifying question that with it balancing out with the staffing shortages, we would not be looking at spending below that 10% operating balance that we've protected with our policy to keep that in place.
Yeah, so it's going to be tight. The original budget that we passed in August, it was right at the 10% mark with $4.2 million revenue loss. And if we can offset that, we have a good chance of sustaining that 10%. But it'll be close, either tenths less or more, but it'll be right around 10%.
Thank you. Jamie, I can't see you, so I'm just going to ask, do you have any questions at this time for Russ?
No, thank you.
Ms. Goodburn or Ms. Embry? Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any further questions on this item. So looks like we're good to move on to the next one. Okay. That'll go longer. All right. Our next item on our agenda is item 3.1. It's a presentation on the Sustainability Summit.
So I would like to introduce Dr. Leanne Neal for this presentation, and just sort of an intro. On October 1st, we had all 6 high schools represented to focus on sustainability and set priorities for the next 5 years. I had the opportunity to at least welcome them to the CAA before they started their work, and I think they had an exciting day, and they have a great report to share with us. So I recognize Joan Levins in the audience, who did the previous 5 years of sustainability, so I'm thankful she's here to support their work, because they have some exciting work to share with us. So Dr. Neal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Yes, we're very excited and pleased, members of the board, Dr. Hubbard, and those who are attending or listening tonight. I'm going to move quickly through the first few slides and then introduce our special guests, which are our student representatives, who will share out their work. We titled it From the Ground Up, Students Driving Sustainability in Schools, and I think that's an accurate depiction of our overall sustainability initiatives in Shawnee Mission. They really have been sort of grassroots built, and our students have been critical in that. To give you just a little bit of context, the sustainability initiatives really came out of strategic planning, the previous strategic plan, and really that based on that stakeholder input in 2015. So not too long thereafter, Joan Levins, then Director of Sustainability, and now I fondly refer to her as Director of Sustainability Emeritus, led the work and came up with a framework that we have revisited now 5 years later to bring students together for a youth summit to learn from people in the community who are doing work around sustainability, and to really give some thoughtful discourse around what should the priorities be that would drive the work in our Shawnee Mission School District community related to this important focus. The slide here, you can quickly see that those were the 5 priorities that came out of the summit in 2016. We revisited, we used the same framework essentially that was used in 2016, and we had 24 students from all 6 high schools who came together on October 1st with their teachers. We wanted them to hear some historical context about sustainability in our district, learn from those professionals in the community, and then identify critical issues that they would recommend to us as priorities that we would want to work on in the next, say, 5 years. So, as you can see, that's the group. Here are we could not have done this without the input and support of some really key partners. We had Lindsay Constance, who actually is a teacher for us, as well as a Shawnee council person and very active in Climate Action KC. She led a breakout session. Partner Brian Alferman from Johnson County Government, he's their Sustainability Program Manager, also co-chairs Climate Action KC committee with Joan Levins. Each of them also led breakout sessions. Jennifer Perry, she came from Evergy to talk around some energy pieces. We had Laura Steele from Bike Walk KC, and then Ashley Usey, who's a sustainability specialist from Huffer Welker, and she talked more around some of the design and health and wellness issues. So we really appreciated their time and volunteering to come and work with our students. And also, we couldn't have done it without the teachers, 2 of whom are with us tonight, PJ Bourne, Rustita Bay, and then their colleagues. And here are the priorities that came out of this year's summit. You will see that the priorities essentially remained in similar context to those in 2016, with a couple of exceptions. And there was some movement around how they prioritized those priorities. You'll see that renewable energy rose to the top. It originally had been under a context of efficiency around energy, water, and compost and recycling. They really identified energy and then compost and recycling as 2 separate priorities that needed a focus. Education was really important to them, and they'll talk about that. Nature, the rain gardens and school gardens moved down a bit, but that may be a nod to some of the work that we've been doing over the last 5 years. Transportation remained, and then really clear mental and physical health and well-being. That was a really loud and clear, important, essential component that really the suggestions and the authentic feedback that the students gave really, it goes beyond just sustainability. So I chose to break that out as its own, and we're going to invite them to talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. All right, so I'm going to invite our first 2 student presenters to come up. Our first 2 student presenters are Soli Gento and Arlasia Jones from Shawnee Mission West.
So our first priority was to have all Shawnee Mission School District buildings LEED certified by 2050. If you do not know what LEED certification is, it's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So the certification would grant that all buildings would have renewable energy and emit as low possible emissions and waste as we can.
Our second priority was to have some element in all of our schools that it's renewable energy by 2030, like solar panels and wind turbines. Shawnee Mission West already has a couple of solar panels, but I think we would all like to see a little more district action when it comes to that.
Our third part of the renewable energy priority was to have all Shawnee Mission School District schools switch completely to LED lights by 2040. But not only this, to prioritize natural light over LED lights.
Another part of our plan was to develop a plan to reduce our carbon footprint.
And that's a very general goal, but it's accomplishable. Our last part was to invest in electrical equipment to reduce carbon footprints. We discussed October 1st about lawnmowers, and the use of lawnmowers all at once could emit a large amount of emissions that is certainly not good for our carbon footprint. We were talking about staggering that along with dishwashing machines and other equipment in our schools.
All right. Thank you all very much. Next up, for priority 2, we have students from Shawnee Mission South. We have Carolyn Armstrong, Rosemary Durr, and Lily Zielinski. And I know Rosemary is here, and Carolyn's here.
One of our first things was educating students on more action they can take, whether this is forming some kind of club or implementing a course at school designed to educate students more on what they can do to be more sustainable.
Yeah, I think that we just kind of talked about, going to the next slide, kind of just offering some incentives as well so that we could get students more involved, like offering, so for NHS, for example, we all have to get our hours if you're involved in NHS. So providing those kinds of opportunities like we did last year at our school with planting trees, that I think was a great way to get kids involved with doing something good for the earth. And then going off of what Rosemary was saying, requiring a unit in a class that everyone takes would be great. Like, we take environmental ed, but that's not a required class, so we already learn about these kinds of things. But we both noticed not a lot of talk about sustainable energy and that sort of thing in our biology classes or our health classes.
Yeah, and going off of what Carolyn mentioned about NHS and planting trees, if we were able to implement some kind of natural area at every school, Shawnee Mission South has a SMESL, but we are currently working towards planting a garden through our special education classes. And that's something that I think if every school had going for them, it could benefit by creating building new relationships within students and teachers, as well as bettering stuff for the community as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Education, and they were very thoughtful and talked a lot about clubs and really trying to stretch some of the sustainable education components across that elementary, middle, and high. So that was a topic of importance. And while I know we've worked on threading some of those standards into the curriculum, the students were just reflective that they felt like we could be doing more. All right, priority 3, I'd like to introduce Molly Lawton from Shawnee Mission North.
One of our first recommendations was to recommit and strengthen the cafeteria and recycling and food composting programs at all levels. We have a really well-oiled machine, but it can only work if everybody is putting in the effort to make it that well-oiled machine. Our next recommendation was to seek sources that decrease packaging and food waste, so like less single-use plastic and less items that come individually wrapped, so we just decrease our plastic waste and our food waste overall. We also want to add additional types of recycling. Not everything can be recycled the same way, and this will just help reduce our footprint and like make the earth more clean. We also want to educate and train custodial team members to support these efforts. We noticed at our school that the custodians didn't have enough time or training to keep the recycling and trash separate. They would just dump it into one pile, and that really is discouraging to people who try to make these efforts known and take the effort to separate these into their individual piles. And we also want to encourage reusable water bottles and expand the water refill fountain. Not all the schools in the district have these, and it's just appealing and more easy to use for students, and it just makes it more encourageable to use. And along with the encouraging and educating custodial team, it's to also standardize methods of waste removal across the district. So if a janitor, say, moves schools, they don't have to learn a new system of waste removal. They can just keep that same method across. It makes it easier for them and for us. We also want to increase use of visuals and develop a supervision of the wasteline to educate and train students and staff of the proper waste disposal, and along with this, have students create those PSAs to provide the training. It gets more student involvement in and brings awareness to the situation that's at hand and just makes it more notable. And the last thing we had was to take the waste and turn it into something beautiful. We already have some gardens, but I would like to see more, especially with the composting. Waste doesn't have to be a bad thing, and we can turn it into something beautiful to help make our schools look more appealing overall.
Thank you. It was interesting in this topic. I think it really reflects students who have come up through the system. Prior to the pandemic, we had a very targeted focus around food composting, recycling, those kind of things. In the last 2 years, I think we would all agree that we've had to do a balance of what we could really press on. Even with the packaging, with sourcing of products, that has been increasingly difficult. But they were very passionate about it. They recognized that they had been able to do it better at the younger grade levels, and moving up, they wanted to continue that commitment. And so thinking differently about how could we recommit ourselves to doing that across elementary, middle, and high. For priority 4, I'd like to introduce Erin Hansen from Shawnee Mission East.
I'm Erin. I'm a senior from East, and I took environmental ed last year, and I've taken zoology this year. A huge part of or concern in my school was about the rain gardens and natural areas or lack thereof. As of now, there's about 80% of schools have some sort of natural space. However, my school would really love to see all of our schools have some sort of natural area. We also, in a plan of trying to accomplish this, we thought we would audit every school district site to create an inventory to see what school currently has or needs. Following that, we would review each site to identify what those needs might be, whether they might be trees, grasses, flowers, or gardens. We would like to involve the school community, which might be students, staff, parents, to ensure there's an educational awareness regarding the why, where, how, and purpose of these natural areas, and to build ownership in the process for more effective use and maintenance to keep these areas up. We would also develop a proposed budget and timeline for implementation. And then lastly, we would like to involve the community, partner with experts in this field and naturalists, and work with building and district leaders along with city officials for approvals. A thought process on how we could implement a lot of just community involvement, especially throughout the school with students, because this is not obviously everyone's passion. At my school, share is a huge thing, and a lot of students love to get in share hours and get community service hours, and they're always asking in our group chat, hey, what community projects or volunteer hours do we have coming up that we could sign up for? We thought this could be a great implementation into our share program to get more students involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you. For our 5th priority, I'd like to introduce Logan Gray from Shawnee Mission Northwest.
Hi, my name's Logan Gray. I'm a senior at Shawnee Mission Northwest. I took Environmental Education 1 last year as a junior, and then I'm taking Environmental Education 2 this year as a senior. So the first recommendation we had was improve the efficiency and reliability of the bus system. A lot of kids in our school district rely on the bus, especially those middle school and elementary school kids. And so by doing this, we would definitely gather and review data regarding school bus routes and track them and ensure optimal efficiency in the routing. Another thing we would do is work with city partners to ensure routes are safe. Those are examples of like repaving of streets or clear routes to schools. Another thing we could do is offer incentives for biking to school. I personally thought this was a really good idea. I talked with the people from Ride KC and talked about, getting them to work with us, as well as adding incentives for other kids, like, treats or shirts or, whatever it is, to encourage them to ride to school more on their bikes. Another thing we would do is enhance the safety of crosswalks with solar-powered flashing lights. That would help cars notice that there are crosswalks there and, students are walking across. And then connections with renewable energy, priority 1, that are recommended to investigate include installing EV charging stations at schools, just like we have here at the CAA, and then also getting electric buses charged by solar power instead of having to use regular engine and gas-powered buses. So,
thank you. So I think the comment was incentivized to make biking to school cool at the high school. So that was their mission. Now we get to the essential consideration around physical and mental health and well-being. And I'd like to invite the students to come back up to the podium to really share out, maybe each one of them, a thought around some of the discussion. There was a lot of sharing from the staff, from the teachers that were there, as well as the students, around the levels of mental health and wellness needs, the levels of stress, and creating some spaces within the schools to support this. And they had some really great ideas. So students, you want to come up? Did any of you share out some thoughts around health and well-being?
So a huge thought of ours with this was mainly, one of them was more comfortable seating options to help with focus. A huge problem that I heard a lot of the students from each school agreeing with is the fact that the desks that we have now, the small little ones that you can barely fit your school-issued MacBook on, they aren't comfortable, and when you're not comfortable, you aren't able to focus. At least I know I am. Whenever I'm more comfortable, I'm more likely to get my work done because I'm not thinking of how uncomfortable I am and how much I just rather get out of the desk and walk around. So just thinking about implementing maybe more unconventional seating options, whether they be large, long couches, bean bags, just something that would help allow you to focus more and make it a more comfortable and learning environment.
One thing that was very notable to me in my group was we talked a lot about integrating nature into the school day and just more time outside overall. The LED lights that we have in our school kind of keep you at like a heightened all day, like you can think it's like noon, from just like evolution over time. Like we're just used to the sun being at high and like the lights represent that. So it just kind of keeps you heightened all day and like alert, and that's very draining over a certain period of time. And just integrating nature into the school day, like getting more time outside is really important. Vitamin D is also very important, and just incorporating like plants more into the classrooms would help a lot with like the mental health of the students.
So I think the next thing is definitely review and consider like the homework expectation of students. Especially with the pandemic, everything going on, students are having to stay home, and there's been a lot of extra stress because of that. And I think adding a ton of essays or a ton of math homework or just biology homework, whatever it might be, that definitely does not help their mental health whatsoever. And I think one important thing I said was last time I was here was you have to be able to take care of yourself before you take care of other things, especially the environment. So definitely looking at homework and trying to see if the level of homework that we're giving students now is an okay level, and if it's not, then we definitely need to lower that amount. So
I'm going to bounce off of what was just previously said. When it comes to assigning homework and things like that, there needs to be more awareness of what could be happening within students' lives outside of school, because as much as that is talked about in school, I don't think it's brought to focus as well, because, counseling is great and everything, but there really needs to be an option for students to be able to talk about what is going on and how much school and how much is being assigned could be affecting them, because that added stress on what could be going on is stressful, so they can't exactly focus on multiple things at once.
Yeah, so one of the things that kind of stood out to me was the fact that I feel like a lot of students, at least people that I know, some of my friends, and me included, to be transparent, completely transparent, I've struggled really bad with mental health, especially in middle school and the beginning of high school, and I didn't know that there were resources for me within the school already. So I think knowing that there are people at the school that can actually help you is really important. And kind of, I know maybe once a year we talk about suicide prevention or we talk about how to relieve stress, but I feel like there needs to be more conversation around that, especially at this age where we're just now piling on a bunch of different stressors that kind of adjust the whole course of our lives. We need to be learning that now so that later in life we don't struggle with it so hard. So that's my thing.
Another thing brought up at the meeting was adjusting the school schedule a little bit. As a person who works a job and doesn't get off till like 9:30, 10, I don't know if I could perform as well in trigonometry the next morning. Like, it's a little hard to just immediately just wake up and get out there, even if you have a good breakfast, even if you have a quick cup of coffee. So that's another consideration.
I wanted to mention more personalized learning. I recently had a Socratic seminar in my English class discussing, what would we do to this American school system if we could change one thing, what would you do? And a lot of the things brought up were concerned about creativity and the fact that students mostly do the same rote thing every day, and that can become really draining and just boring, but we talked about, including music and art and different forms of creativity within classroom structure. And, this also includes, some of our environmental priorities, such as like rain gardens and spending more time outside. That would really allow students to feel like they can create and, express themselves in and out of school. So.
All right, thank you, students. I appreciate it. If you'll hang on for a minute with us, the board may have some questions for you. I'm going to just wrap up by saying, first of all, I hope you feel as I do. The future is so bright. The day was amazing. The students just they took so much thought and care in crafting this, and they were so open and authentic that it was really a powerful day. We have a lot of opportunity in our region, I think, to connect. The region is doing a lot around climate action planning and strategies. And so the opportunity that we have to collaborate with our municipal and regional partners is really high right now. Many of them have similar priorities. Many of our municipalities that we serve in Shawnee Mission have been supportive of that climate action KC planning, as well as I think we have an opportunity to do some real world connection around emerging careers in this area as well. So we hope to continue to support and foster that culture of sustainability in Shawnee Mission, and we stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
I'm just going to start by saying thank you so much to the 7 students who are here with us this evening. And I'm noticing that Mr. Stratton and the young man from Northwest may have something in common with their service to the district at this time. And that tickled me. I don't know if Mr. Stratton noticed it or not. But I was thankful that you all came, and I was able to welcome you to the district that day, and to all of our partners who came to work with the students. And I will just start with Reverend Guy, and we can work our way around on questions.
I too want to thank all of you for participating in this day, for being willing to be vulnerable and open and share your ideas and hear ideas from others. And you have given us a lot to think about and to start processing and seeing how we might be able to implement all your great ideas. So thank you for all of that work that you've been doing. I really appreciated the way that you brought the students' mental and physical health into it. I think that is such an important part of sustainability. And I guess I'm curious if any of you have ever had a school that you've attended that had like a quiet room or a space in the building where you felt like you could go if you were having an especially stressful day, or maybe it was an outdoor space, or have you ever experienced that in any of the buildings, or how would you go about creating a space like that in the school?
Personally, I'm at Shawnee Mission South High School. I haven't necessarily had or at least seen any type of room like that, but I feel like if you are able to have certain teachers that have either reached out to you or you've reached out to them, it's easier to find comfort in that because you're able to confide in someone who's in the district or in your school as well. And it's also important to have someone who's a teacher there that can give perspective from both sides of it, because I feel like that's important. But I think there should be something at school that is working towards, hey, you guys can come here if you are feeling this way, and there are people you can talk to, whether it's a peer or a staff member that is there to assist. There should be some kind of program or room that is able to help students.
Thank you.
Thank you for the thought-provoking presentation. Well done. It gives us lots to think about, as Reverend Guy said. I have no questions. Thank you.
Dr. Sinclair?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, all of you. I'll just go start with priority one, and I think that was Soli and Argento. I'm sorry if I got those names wrong. So around priority one, just looking at that, I even just the first bullet, looking at LEED certified buildings. And so I'm just curious if you had, there was probably a lot going on. It has really nice symmetry to what we were able to do with the bond that we're in right now. So I don't know if that was a part of the conversation that you all had, but the five elementary buildings that are being, new buildings being constructed are being constructed with LEED certification. And we had a number of elementary buildings built in the previous bond that were built towards LEED but did not go through the LEED certification process. So we have this great opportunity to look at the efficiency and the other features of these 10 buildings or so, and just look at the impact of how close we are to LEED, the additional costs of the actual certification process, that kind of thing. So I don't know if it's 2025 when we get close to the 5 new buildings, 26, something like that, and then we'd have another 5 years, so 2030, we'd have some really nice information and data. But was that something that you all were able to talk about or had thoughts about?
So we were able to speak to the LEED coordinator or someone of that role, and he mentioned how there were, what was it? It was nine LEED certified buildings within Johnson County. He did not mention the 5 new elementaries, but that is amazing progress.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Anyways, I just love that. So I love how the conversations are coinciding like that. Yeah. So that's super exciting. I do have another question that I think might involve priority 1 and 4. So that, I think that was Aaron, priority 4. So I loved the talk about doing the inventory around the natural spaces and the rain gardens. So is that something that you all are thinking about taking on, like a client-based project? Like, is that something that's going to happen? with the students. I just was curious where that was going. So doing kind of an inventory of natural spaces, or I didn't know where that was going next.
There is not currently a plan. It was an idea, however, to get the students involved, whether it be some sort of club or implementing it into being able to label them as service hours or volunteer hours. That's how we'd like to start that.
I love that. Well, so I was part of the natural space that was put in at Highlands when that was rebuilt around 2008 or so. So if you do that, feel free to add me to the little contact list for Highlands Elementary.
Dr. Sinclair, we talked a little bit at the end of our time together about I'm hoping that we'll be able to create a youth, a sustainability advisory group. And out of that, I think we'd like to consider definitely some student projects, some of that real world learning, having them participate in that audit across the district. So that is something that we hope to launch with that advisory group. And I'm hoping some of these students will be on it.
And actually a shout out to you, Dr. Neal, because I believe you are kind of shepherding the lead in doing all the lead certification, the actual paperwork and crossing the I's and dotting the T's. So thank you for taking ownership of that for the district.
You're welcome. And I do think some of their discussion, we did talk briefly about that being a part of the bond. And I think that was energizing for them and also for the presenters. Brian Alferman from Johnson County was the one who spoke with them around some of the lead initiatives that they're doing at the county level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question that might best be directed to Dr. Neal or perhaps Dr. Hubbard. With the work that some of the local municipalities are doing with the Climate Action Plan and with the Johnson County Commission also just recently adopting the Climate Action Plan, would it be possible for that perhaps, or maybe I should direct it to Sarah too, is there an opportunity for the policy committee to look at that and maybe, you know, if there's a youth advisory committee, is there something that the board could do with regards to adopting a climate action plan or putting that into place? Because I think I would be interested in having that conversation. And so I'll just turn it over there.
Well, I think there's lots of questions in that question, but as far as policy review, I definitely think the policy review committee could look at a particular policy. As far as integrating the work into our daily work, I think this work fits in so much of our current strategic plan. You know, even the late start or changing school times, those things fit in there. The lead with our facilities and strategy 5. So I think a lot of this is very easily integrated into our strategic plan, but I think also as we move forward, I was thinking we're in year 3 of the strategic plan, so in year 4, we'll really start talking about what's next, and I think this will really lead the way into what's next in that next round of 5 years. So yes to all of those questions. I think we just need to have the conversations about what our priorities are and how we take this report and integrate it into the work that we're already doing.
And then my follow-up question would be, so we have 5 priority recommendations, but they are not submitted to us, or are they submitted to us in priority order? So are they all equal priorities, or is priority 1 the priority, and then priority 2, and then priority 3? Is that?
They are listed in the priority order that the students rank them. And then, but the caveat is also that health and well-being piece is at the top of the list. But because it was I thought it was bigger than just sustainability, I opted to pull that as its own. But that was also a very top priority for the students.
And then on the transportation, I know that there were some federal dollars recently for upgrading to more electric fleets for buses. Could someone explain to me what that process looks like when we have a contract with another busing company for that? And if you can't do it tonight, that's totally fine, but maybe that's something to look into, exploring what that looks like. If it's not a fleet that we own, maybe I'm putting a note to that for that to be something that we explore later.
I don't know that I have an answer for that, but I'm guessing, and Dr. Atha can probably help us here, I'm guessing that's something we could write in a contract, that a certain percentage would have to be at least by maybe year 1 or year 2, year 3. Especially right now with supply. I'm not sure we could have it immediately, but I'm guessing that's something we could write in a contract.
Ironically, we are starting our conversation tomorrow with DS Bus in reference to our contract. We're currently toward the end of a 5-year contract. So that could be a good discussion point with them moving forward as we look at potentially renewing that contract and bringing it to the board for your consideration.
Thank you. I'll pass it down the line.
Thank you for your work and for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Ms. Embry?
I would echo all of the thanks. It's great to have you guys here. I appreciate that you were asked about sustainability and took it a step further and also provided us some thoughts about health and wellness. Way to go. That's good self-advocacy right there. My question is largely, I would sort of second Ms. Owsley's ideas about just finding ways to make sure that we continue to make this a priority in our district. I think I'm really interested in how we can hold ourselves accountable for actually seeing these recommendations through. So if there's any more detail you can provide, Dr. Neal, or thoughts you might have. I've heard from folks in other districts who felt it was really important to have clearly measurable goals that they were working toward, and I wondered if this might be the starting point for some of those goals.
And I think, as I understand it, in 2016, when they did the first summit, the priorities that were recommended at that time really helped inform the initial goals and work around sustainability. I think these students have done an amazing job. They have even put some actionable, pretty big, audacious goals in here. And so whether we're able to make progress on that or attain them, but I think it's definitely meant to drive the awareness, the engagement, and the participation and the movement forward. And with all of the work going on in the region, like I said earlier, a number of our other municipalities have done things like just adopting a resolution in support of some of that work. That's a step that some of them have made. And then I'll be working with leadership to determine how do we want to move forward with that. And always happy to bring back information to the board to let you know how we're progressing.
Yeah, just want to give Ms. Borgman an opportunity.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Jamie, do you have any questions?
No further questions. It's a little hard. It was a little hard to hear, all of the presentation, so I'm going to go back and watch it. And also, just a huge thank you to the students for presenting tonight.
Thank you. Dr. Sinclair, go ahead.
Just a quick, some of the items that were referenced in relation to helping with kind of some of those mental health needs were like the furniture, or maybe even just having water fillers help to have water. Is that something you could speak to the cycle? I know that there's been a cycle of transitioning more flex furniture and as well as the water fillers. Is that?
So all 5 high schools and middle schools, and actually Horizons happened this past summer. So this past summer we furnished Shawnee Mission North and Trail Ridge Middle School and Horizons. And I can't tell you rotation moving forward, but there are at least 2 schools, whether they be middle and high or both, a combination of each, moving forward in the next 4 years to have full furnishings done. We got feedback from teachers and a few students as we put those in place, and then we've got feedback since then saying we love this, we don't love this maybe. And actually, I was just thinking when they were talking about it, I have a student advisory group of high school kids. So I'm thinking in our next meeting, we may have furniture samples and play with that a little bit.
Thank you.
Reverend Guy? Again, you have given us so many good ideas to think about, but I just want to focus in on the very last one under physical and mental health and well-being, about adjusting the school schedule. And this is something that I personally have been interested in for quite a few years, but then with the pandemic, it's been really hard to even start talking about that. But I think one of the things that happens when we even start asking the question about whether we could change the schedule to start later, immediately everybody comes up with reasons why it won't work, why it's impossible, why it's too hard. And a lot of those reasons have to do with students have to take care of younger siblings. It would upset, sports and club schedules. Students have jobs after school, and so if you move everything later, it would interfere with the students' abilities to work. And so I'm just curious, when you talk to other students, are you getting those kinds of excuses too, and reasons why this is too difficult to even talk about? Or what kind of feedback are you getting from other students?
Well, I guess for me, I wrote a whole paper about this freshman year, actually. So I think I know one of the things that parents will say is, "Oh, well, they'll just stay up later." Okay, we probably are already staying up till midnight, finishing homework or studying for our calc test. Me right now. So that's already happening. I think, for kids that have to work, I think those are all still valid concerns, but also sleep is so important for teenagers, and it's something that we often don't get enough of, and we're the age group that pretty much needs the most sleep other than being a baby. So that's super important, especially the correlation to mental health and sleep is really strong. So things going a little bit later, or at least school clubs and activities, I feel like would be okay, because I know in middle school I was getting more sleep because we were starting at like 8:50, 8:45. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to speak to that.
I know that the usual excuse, especially just reiterating this for parents, is you guys will just stay up later, or you'll goof off or something. You're just using like homework or all these things as an excuse to get a later school time, when that's not the case. Even I know some of my friends don't even work because they play club volleyball or club soccer. So they're going to practice at 8 at night for 2 hours, and they're not getting home till 10 or midnight, and they're trying to balance a social life. They're trying to balance all their homework. One of my friends, she's in IB and she plays club volleyball, and she has to do hours of IB homework along with doing club volleyball, trying to maintain a social life. I personally don't know how she does it. And then also the next morning, I can't see her going to bed earlier than maybe 11. And right the next morning, she's getting up, being at school at 7:40, expected to just get right back in the swing of things, learn a new thing one day, apply it, and move on. So there are so many factors that play into how the current school time is so harsh on us. It's just that honestly I can see that the benefits, and hopefully I can speak for most students, the benefits outweigh any of the negatives. I also agree with the fact of in middle school, pushing the club events or the school events, sports back. It never affected me. I played sports in middle school. It never personally affected me. I'm lucky enough to have a job where I get out maybe at 9 the latest, but I still have to go home and do maybe 3 hours of physics homework. So I'm not in bed till probably 10 p.m. just due to that. So I think there are definitely a lot of factors that we have to include other than just maybe school sports or activities or taking care of siblings or a job. There's definitely more to it, and that's why it's definitely a part of our mental and physical health and well-being.
The students talked about having that, like a flexible day or a portion of a day where they would be able to come in and get some, do some of the work and utilize the time in that way. And also for students who work jobs, is there, I think one of the things that you talked about was, would there be an opportunity for students to earn credit of some sort for that job, on-the-job experience?
Go ahead, Sally. That would be really beneficial to high schoolers, specifically juniors and seniors. They struggle with work and the load of homework every night. So that would be really beneficial. I wanted to mention late starts. We have one late start per week, and every late start, when I come into school, like all of my classes, it just feels so much more energized. I've noticed that focus is much more better during our Thursday schedule. And, when you're talking about pushing back the start of school, like the school time, we usually concern ourselves with, how much time they have outside of school, but it would make our inside time of school much more effective as well. So,
thank you all very much.
I feel like it should be mentioned with scheduling as well. The work put out by the teachers. I feel like there is a stress. I speak for myself, and I think many other students, with the amount of homework we're receiving. It needs to be questioned whether or not it's just keeping us busy or if it's actually affecting what we learn in that class. When you're going home and doing 3 hours of one class, and that's not because you're procrastinating, it's because that was assigned. So you're having students who, on top of the school day, on top of working, on top of trying to maintain social and familial bonds, they're now trying to spread apart from everything else so that they can get this grade in school. We are so focused on our grades because this is what is affecting the rest of our lives. I mean, this is what is pressured during high school. We're working towards college, and whether or not the excessive amount of assignments is actually preparing us or just overwhelming us at the time should be taken into consideration.
And I'd just like to quickly add on to that about, I know certain people where grades have become, and schoolwork has become such an important factor, a make or break factor in their life, whether it be because of teachers or parents or whatever it might be, that they now associate their own self-worth with a grade, a letter grade. My friend will feel worse about herself because she got a B on an essay rather than an A, because all she thinks of was, I could have done better, I could have been better. And so I think that's a lot where questioning the amount of schoolwork we give really comes into play, because people should not be measuring their self-worth or themselves to a letter grade on a piece of paper.
Thank you very much. Do I have any final follow-up? Okay. Thank you very much for coming this evening and for presenting, and Dr. Neal for putting together the Sustainability Summit. And I believe Joan Levins is in the audience, Sustainability Coordinator Emeritus Extraordinaire, former board member. She thought she was going to get away, and we sucked her back in. So thank you. And I think that concludes this presentation for now.
Yes, just a quick thank you to Dr. Neal and Joan Levins and Mr. DeBay and Mr. Bourne, who are back there as well. Thank you all for joining us, and students, it was great to see you and hear from you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is the technology presentation. But, I am actually going to ask my board members, we have 2 meaty presentations tonight because we only have 1 meeting this month because of Thanksgiving. And so if anybody needs a short break, I'd be happy to take a break before this presentation so that you can be refreshed. If you're ready to go and power through, I'm happy to power through. Power through. All right. Then we will move to item 3.2, the technology presentation. Dr. Hubbard.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Drew Lane, Bill Schaefer, James Morgan, Doug Von Mosch, and Lindsay Stevenson. So, Mr. Lane, thanks for joining us.
Certainly. Good evening. Terry, you and I talked about this earlier today. Can I just drive from the keyboard up here? All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to present our program evaluation for the ICT department this evening.
Drew, can you push that mic up a little bit closer? I think one of the shorter students might have moved it down.
Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, that is a little better. Thank you.
All right. So the team has presented a short slideshow presentation for you this evening to outline the highlights of our program evaluation. And we want to start with the leadership slide here, and specifically we wanted to send a shout out to Dr. Atha this evening. Dr. Atha has been a member of the Education Committee for quite some time and a valuable member of the ICT team for a number of years here, and wanted to wish you the best in your upcoming retirement adventure. And thank you very much for your time and dedication. So we have the strategic plan goals up here as a reminder to all of us that the ICT team does respond to and understand these strategic plan objectives. To that end, how the ICT team executes our support role is best described through those what we do and how we do it statements that are contained in our more comprehensive document. And then the team's work itself is probably most readily understood through our 4 focus areas, highlights of which each of us team members will go through this evening. So the first of those focus areas is the general focus area. And the 3 highlights we'd like to pull out here is, about 7 years ago, the ICT team made a paradigm shift towards making cybersecurity or information security an integral part of everything that we do in the department. So we make cybersecurity, a consideration of an objective and outcome of any project that we undertake. As that requirement evolves over time to respond to the growing threat landscape and those types of things, since the last evaluation we provided, we've created an actual embedded task group in the team that deals specifically with information security. Next on our list is in order to better serve our classroom technology needs and gain a deeper and better understanding of how technology is used for academic purposes, ICT has been provided a direct conduit of sorts to the academic team through a recently established position, which is the Coordinator of Educational Technology. Lindsay Stevenson, we work with her regularly and closely, actually contributed to the program evaluation document for the ICT team, and I believe she's with us this evening. And I'd like to recognize her and recognize the work that she's provided and helped us with. It's paid dividends in a very short amount of time, because we do feel like we have a better idea of what classroom needs are, which you would expect that would be something we'd be interested in doing. And then third in the focus area for general is our print shop was recently updated with a large format revision. And that might not seem like a big deal until you recognize that a lot of the signs and those types of things that the district uses have traditionally been printed by the print shop. But as the print shop as the district has used more and more of those types of things, the print shop wasn't able to keep up with demand. And so we looked at that, we looked at the age of the equipment was there, and just recently the board approved the purchase of some hardware that allowed us to be more responsive to our customers and be better able to meet those needs. So that's it for the focus area, the general focus area, and now I'd like to ask Bill Schaefer to come to the podium and introduce himself briefly and talk about his area of expertise and responsibility.
Good evening. My name is Bill Schaefer. I'm the director of the network infrastructure team, the technical services team, and the network security. With that, I'm going to share some information. The first bullet would be the project management. Some of the projects, and this is only a small portion of what these teams have been involved in. One of the current projects is the camera system and the access control that's currently being installed throughout the district. One of the other continuous projects that we always look at is virtualization. Over the past few years, we've currently reduced the physical server footprint from 200 plus physical servers down to less than 60. We constantly keep monitoring that and seeing if we can virtualize even more. One of the projects that we started several years ago, we had a small remote learning platform set up in the district. It was very small, but it taught us a lot, and then when the district went to full remote learning, we were able to scale up on a very short amount of time. On the second bullet, cybersecurity, I'd like to let you know that we're currently in the process of testing 2 platforms. One is multi-factor authentication, MFA, sometimes called two-factor authentication, 2FA, and also cybersecurity awareness training. Once we've completed all of our testing, we're going to then ask for approval to purchase these 2 platforms. Talking about MFA, why is ICT looking at MFA? One of the things that we've seen in surveys, and we know from being in the security side looking, most users have less than 5 passwords for all their accounts. That creates a domino effect, which if a hacker was to circumvent one password, they circumvent all these accounts. That's where MFA can come into play. MFA allows us to require or ask for 2 forms of credentials to access resources. Credentials are categorized in 3 different categories. Something you know, which is a PIN or a password. Something you have, which would be like a credit card, a smart card. Something you are, which would be biometrics or fingerprint. A simple form of MFA is your bank card. You go to an ATM, you swipe the card, that's something you have. You have to type in your PIN, something you know. The second platform is the security awareness training. The security awareness training will help the district to mitigate user risk. The program is designed to help our users to understand the role they play in combating information security breaches. It also teaches them how to detect when there's a possible phishing email, that type of a security incident. On the third bullet point, continuous modernization, ICT has implemented or established a 7-year refresh cycle. This keeps the district's devices under warranty, allows us to have security updates and patches, and also keeps the district utilizing current technology. The one thing I would like to add about the 7-year project or 7-year refresh plan is it does need adjustment from time to time because we do get our vendors that will announce end of life for their platforms, so then we have to adjust. And with that, I'll turn that over to James Morgan to introduce himself and talk about his responsibility.
Good evening. James Morgan, Director of Data and Programming Services. This team continually works to enhance and broaden support for SMSD students, staff, and guardians. In the time permitted, I'll briefly list just a few of the many examples of this work that were detailed in the ICT program evaluation document for the Data and Programming Services team. We set up, customized, and helped to train staff on a new web-based system to be able to enroll new students to SMSD. The initial information needed for enrolling new students can be completed online, including the ability to upload documents needed for the enrollment across the district. We are currently streamlining and enhancing core software and core custom applications, including items such as data entry items for end users, custom forms for improved data collection and analysis, enhanced functionality and expanded use for end users, enhanced and expanded reporting capabilities, enhanced automation between systems, and improvements in tools utilized for importing, exporting, and transporting data between systems. And for the example, in this presentation, we are continually working to expand data analytics to teams and expanding reporting services to provide more timely information for decision makers. We have expanded the service to more teams as we have developed more capabilities and added more reporting services. We currently have multiple teams that are working internally with the data reporting within each of the respective areas, and we are adding more data analytics dashboards with enhanced data analytics and reporting for each of them. One example of the expanded use is included in the presentation slide. It can be found on the main Human Resources webpage by clicking on the link for the Employee Demographic Dashboard. And I'll turn to Doug Von Mosch to introduce himself and to talk more about his area of responsibility.
Good evening. I'm Doug Von Mosch. I'm the Director of Customer Services within the ICT department. And I have a couple of items to highlight for you tonight. The first one on this slide is the grow our own approach that we take within ICT. So the quote here is actually a snippet from SMSD's HR team. But I felt it just did a good job of really kind of highlighting and bringing some clarity to one of the ways that our team supports the strategic plan as well. Oftentimes we kind of work in the background, so it's not unreasonable for those who aren't really familiar with what we do to struggle to connect us with the plan's objectives. In its simplest form, Grow Our Own allows us to build and retain top-notch talent. We do that by providing our team members with multiple pathways in which they can grow professionally, and then that in turn provides long-term value to students, to staff, to the district as a whole. The customer services team is sort of the entry point into those pathways, and then the charts here demonstrate how those pathways have been filled with customer services staff by utilizing Grow Our Own. 2021 really put this approach to the test. We had almost 10% of the ICT team retire this year alone, and that was across multiple pathways. So it was various specialized skill sets that took a hit just in this past year. So there's very real potential for deep institutional knowledge loss with numbers like that. We know it definitely would have been felt outside of our department team as well. So the really good news about that, though, is that the Grow Our Own approach, we were able to fill 100% of those retirements with ready customer services staff. So we really were able to just hit the ground running and keep right on moving the ball forward, so to speak. The second one, I'll make this one pretty quick. COVID positive on purpose. Hopefully Shelby's not going to throw a shoe at me for that. But really where we're going here with this is we think it's important to seek out the positive aspects of the challenges we encounter. COVID certainly presented everyone with a challenge. So pivoting to remote learning, remote working, required us to pivot our support to remote as well. That pivot gave us opportunities to create, expand, and really refine the support that we provided. Many of those changes or improvements or adjustments, if you will long survive COVID. So it's a positive outcome of something that was negative, I think, all the way around. So acknowledging the negative of the situations we encounter, but seeking out the positive for continuous improvement is worthwhile, and it's an approach that we practice. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Drew to wrap up.
So our summary slides really are just lifted bullet points from the report that you received previously, but as you can understand from the team's presentation this evening, there's a lot that goes on in the ICT team that doesn't necessarily rise to the surface. There are a lot of hamsters and hamster wheels back there that turn all the time that most people don't even really see. And so as I promised, we want to do a brief slide deck presentation for you this evening. We'll bring that presentation to a close now, but we stand ready to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start with Ms. Hembry. Do you have some questions for the team?
I have questions that probably involve Lindsay as well, so sorry, Lindsay. But I would just like to know what we learned about instructional use of technology through COVID-19. I feel like we were going into the pandemic with a lot of questions about the appropriate role of technology, and then, at least in my household, we used a lot of technology for the last year and a half. And as we're coming out of COVID, sort of where does that leave us with how we think about technology in the classroom?
So if it's okay with you, we could tackle that in kind of two ways. I can talk to you about the technical things that we learned, and then if Lindsay wouldn't mind coming up and talking to you about the educational technology components of those. So there were a number of lessons that we learned, but maybe more beneficially, there were a number of lessons that we didn't need to learn that we saw other school districts did learn. Part of it was a pre-investment by the district in the digital one-to-one initiative and setting that groundwork for the use of one-to-one devices in classroom instruction. Yes, we've had some growing pains and discussions around what is the appropriate length of time to use those types of things, what are appropriate resources themselves. But when we talk about the underlying, hey, I understand how to do this, we'd kind of laid that groundwork, and that worked to our advantage during the pandemic. We'd done things. You heard Bill talk about a small remote learning environment that we had spun up. I wish I could tell you that the crystal ball we had predicted all of this. Actually, I'm glad I can't, because I'd be in a lot of trouble if I knew this was coming and didn't tell anybody. But those are the types of things that our school district has enabled the professionals that work for you to look into, to investigate, to kind of incubate, and then grow into something that is functional and real. And likewise, it allows us to take some risks here and there, to experiment with things that maybe teach us lessons. We don't bring those deployments to fruition or large scale, but it allows us to learn things from the technical component. There are painful lessons that we learn technology-wise. One of those is how well things work when you have technology that works well for content filtering, and when you have technology that doesn't work so well for content filtering. We learned that lesson, and it was somewhat painful. And then maybe the one that is going to really probably nag at us for a very, very long time is home internet connectivity. And how do we address this so that when we have our kids and our teachers at school, we can provide a level of internet connectivity that's reliable, it's sustainable, it's about it's the same for everybody. Once you take people out of the buildings and put them in their own home or other environments, you don't have that guarantee anymore. And so methodologies that you've developed for delivering resources and providing instruction, those types of things, they don't end up being the same for every kid, because they don't all have the same level of access to those resources. And so that's probably another lesson that we've learned from the technology. So, but Lindsay, if you'd like to talk about, and you've done some really fantastic stuff, and we've been happy to be a part of it. So.
I think from the instructional side, one of the things I tell our instructional coaches and our teachers is, like, the more feedback they're giving me is what keeps me in touch with what they need and what they don't need. And one of the things that I've heard, three of the things that I've heard that I think people walked away from the pandemic with is, number one, I see teachers wanting to give digital feedback more frequently. How do I do this, and what's the best way for this? And, oh, this is a new, update with Canvas that's allowing me to do this. So just that digital feedback. I see a lot of teachers asking and trying to make things work now that we're back in person for personalizing learning. So just how do I get kids what they need when they need it? And truly, as I was a special education teacher and an English and reading teacher, I can't do that without technology. I don't think any human can meet the needs of all the students in the classroom without some type of technology to quickly get people what they need when they need it. And then the final thing would be, collecting data. So when they have we've gotten into the new quizzes with Canvas a lot. People are still using their Google Forms, but they're realizing how quickly they can see what those kids need because they're able to get data quickly. So those are things I heard from teachers, seeing them trying to duplicate and continue to do. So I can go on, but does that answer your questions?
Yes, I'm curious if you have any information to share too about Lightspeed as part of this. I've been using it for my own kids recently. I can get their Sunday morning report.
Oh, the parent
one of them
portal?
using the internet on Saturday when they said they weren't. How's the content filtering going, and what kind of data are we getting from it?
We kind of we share things, but
yes,
this is
you're a
his.
team.
So I want to make sure I understand the question. You're asking about Lightspeed. Are you referring more to the parent portal that we recently?
Yes.
Okay. So the parent portal is we're still very early on. And to be completely transparent about it, the parent portal and the data that comes from the parent portal really is intended for the parents. There's not a lot of us circling back around to look at that data to see, what's going on here, what's going on there. We generally use different data from feedback we get from students, teachers, those types of things about this shouldn't be blocked, this should be blocked. Is there a configuration change that we could make that would allow access to these resources but not others? So there's internal data in that system that we use, but the parent portal data, by and large, really is for just the parents.
Thank you.
Ms. Goodburn?
I just want to thank you for your presentation and for the long version of the report. It's 55 pages long, and leave it to the ICT team to have all sorts of data and charts and everything. And I'm just looking at it really quick, and the help desk call times, those are amazing when you think about how long I spend on help desks in different places on hold with banks and other places now. But these times are fantastic. So anyway, kudos to you all for getting people's questions answered and helping them in a timely fashion. But anyway, thanks again for the report and appreciate all the work that you do.
Thank you.
Ms. Borkman, do you have any questions at this time?
Nothing additional, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sinclair?
I have a comment and a question. It's similar to what Ms. Goodburn was saying. I appreciate all the metrics that the team is tracking from a user perspective. So from that user end, both students, staff, and parents, it's really helpful to see that you're continuing to monitor not only kind of the call times, but the tickets and tickets by month and how frequently folks are calling at different times of year, and just a number of metrics that lead to better informed service support. So I appreciate that. The other piece, one other takeaway too, is clearly there is a lot more to what goes on than I was aware in reading this. So that's helpful for me to understand all the things that go on behind the scenes that aren't necessarily something that it would ever kind of impact a user, unless, and that's a good thing, right? So that we're keeping our data secure and accessible and all those pieces. I believe I kind of was just wanting to learn a little bit more about the impact of some of the work with our new position. So I appreciate the support of the community, recognizing the value of adding back in some administrative positions that support learning and instruction and building those connections. But I think you provided some of those answers there already about how that's playing out in the district. So thank you for that as well.
Certainly.
Mr. Stratton?
I don't really have any questions. This has been very interesting, but I will share a brag back with your department. Dr. Sinclair and I had a chance meeting with one of the vendors that's providing some of the security systems that are being installed in some of our buildings, and he was very excited to share with us how we have taken so many steps above and beyond so many other school districts when it comes to the security systems we're putting into our buildings. I'm not going to go into detail because that's the security. It was
Thank you.
quite impressive, state of the art. But so thank you for leading the way into the future, because it sounded like we were ahead of the game, and I was proud to hear that.
Reverend Guy?
I also don't have any questions, but I do too want to thank you for the full written report. There is a lot of great information in there, and I think many of us have already said that we learned a lot of things we had no idea were going on behind the scenes, but that's because you all are doing them so well that that's ideally what you want. You want people to not really call attention to what you're doing because it's just going smoothly. So thank you for all of that, and especially for all that your team did to pivot during the pandemic and make sure that our students could continue to learn the best way we could possibly create for them to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm not seeing any further questions at this time. I do want to say thank you for your presentation this evening. It is appreciated, and I know we still have parents who are wanting to make sure we're utilizing technology with best practices. There was a lot of concerns right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit and technology became the thing that was allowing us to provide instruction to begin with. So it was very core to everything. And so I want us to be mindful, or I just need to remind myself to be mindful that as we ease out of the pandemic and that critical phase, to just make sure that we're cognizant and aware of concerns of parents and the community to make sure we're using technologies with best practices. And I have no reason to believe that we're not right now. I'm just wanting to remind myself, because I know that we have parents who, well, I feel like our kids have just basically been online for a year and a half by necessity. So thank you again for your presentation this evening, and I think we will wrap up this portion of the meeting for now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The next item on our agenda is the approval of the consent items. So unless I hear a request to remove something, I will seek a motion to approve our consent items for this evening.
Move approval, Hembry.
Second, Goodburn.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is item 7.1. This is an update, a proposed update to the COVID-19 mitigation plan beginning January 3rd. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Hubbard so she can speak to that, and I think we have a couple people here who are going to speak to it as well.
So thank you. Yes, before you do have a recommendation for an update to the mitigation plan, as well as a winter guidance document for events, both at the elementary and secondary level. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Stubblefield and Dr. Ziegler, I believe, to go through just a brief presentation over sort of highlight the changes for you all. And then we also have Elizabeth from Johnson County Department of Health and Shelby Reback here to answer questions that we may have moving forward. So at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Stubblefield.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard. Thank you for the opportunity to present our updated mitigation plan to the board for their consideration. As I think about our strategic plan, as I think about our mission statement in Shawnee Mission School District, it's really written in student-centered language and student-friendly language, and I think that's why we're here. We're here to make sure that we are keeping our students and our staffs safe, and that's basically the very first thing we talk about is keeping schools open and safe is the top priority, was the top priority and remains the top priority from our first mitigation plan to this one. So in terms of, what is best practice, we know that the strongest mitigation measure is, the vaccine. So we continue to encourage our students and our staff to be vaccinated to protect our community. I'm going to allow Dr. Ziegler to discuss some of the data points for your consideration. In terms of the collaboration that took place with this plan, there was a lot of discussion, a lot of collaboration between district administrators, some building administrators, and leaders to really bring forth a plan that we feel is going to be is going to allow our students to be safe. So, Dr. Z.
There we go. We wanted to talk a little bit of just where we're at with the data this year. And then I'm also going to look to where we were at last year in some comparisons before we get further into the plan. This is current as of our data that we just put up this morning. So last week's data are reported in our positive cases. So I just want to note our vertical axis is much different this year, thankfully, than it was last year. So we are in a better place with the cases. So this data that is displayed is just in our student cases, so positive and presumed positive cases this year. You'll note that we did peak. Let's see, we had 53 cases that were at the elementary level back on September 24th. That's been our high point. And then from that point, we did see some decline. We are trending a little bit up, but predominantly our elementary cases are what's leading in the district right now. If we go ahead and click to the next slide, again, note the scale on that vertical axis again, much different. We reported the data a little bit differently last year, so we were looking at positive and presumed positive cases across staff and students. So I didn't go back and extrapolate the data any differently than it was already reported. But you'll note that in the data, significant more cases is what we saw throughout the year. So what's different? We were back in school for a good portion of the year last year. We were masking last year. We're masking this year. As Mr. Stubblefield pointed out, what's different is we have vaccinations as well. So I want to look at the next slide, and this is off of our county data warehouse.
And if we'll zoom in, that'll give you the picture across the county, but that gets us within our 435 corridor and the zip codes represented within our district. And I want to share a celebration. So the message in terms of vaccines being a key mitigation support is out there. I went back just to share with you what's changed since we came back into school in August. If you look at the range in the data of our zip codes, these are just for 12 to 17-year-olds fully vaccinated as it's reported currently on our county data dashboard. That very top northeast corner where we see an 84% fully vaccinated in 12 to 17-year-olds. Back in July, that data was reported at 35.4%, and then 1 month from that date in August, as we returned back to school, it jumped to 61%. So we are still seeing some change in the data for vaccinations in our 12 to 17-year-olds. Just as another point of comparison, our lowest zip code in our district is represented by that 66203 at 49.7%. In July, that was 20% fully vaccinated, and then jumped the start of the school year to 31%. So we are still seeing movement on vaccination, and those numbers are looking much better than they were last spring when we started being able to offer those vaccines to our 12 to 17-year-olds. Now we know that 5 to 11 is available. There are resources available. I checked this morning through JCDHE's clinic in Mission. There were vaccine appointments available this morning that individuals for 5 to 11-year-olds could sign up for. So more opportunities are coming and certainly available, and we'll continue to support those in the district to the extent we can. I'll go ahead and turn back over to Mr. Stubblefield.
Thank you, Dr. Ziegler. Learning opportunities, this is just a continuation of what we proposed in the fall for mitigation. One of the big things, virtual options for students. We'll continue to make recommendations to that approved KSDE list for any family that is looking for a virtual opportunity. Visitors, we'll go ahead and continue to limit our capacity, especially during the school day for visitors, and they must follow our building mitigation protocols. Vaccination and testing, again, we recommend that all individuals receive the vaccine. We will work with other partners, community partners, to facilitate vaccination clinics, and we will continue to offer testing for those symptomatic and exposed asymptomatic individuals in our community. Test to Stay is going to be new starting January 4th. We will work in collaboration with Mod Laboratories, who does our testing currently. This is testing that would occur for 7 days after exposure to a positive case. We will have a centralized testing location. That location moved most recently from the CAA over to Broadmoor. I believe that started this week. Students and staff participating in that Test to Stay program must wear a mask at all times while at school and while participating in school-related extra and co-curricular activities. Testing only occurs when school is in session, and Sundays occurring the day prior to school being in session. We will not have testing on Saturdays. Students and staff participating in Test to Stay must also receive their negative PCR test results prior to attending school or work the following day. All right, so here we are. This is the important part, huh? For elementary schools, and again, we are looking at this a little bit differently from the fall mitigation plan. We are separating our elementary schools from our secondary schools. So elementary schools, the recommendation would be that masks are going to be required for all students and staff. At this time, there is a county mandate for this age group. Those individuals do not need to mask outdoors or need to mask when they are outdoors. We will continue to mask on buses as well, as is the federal guidance currently. The difference would be for secondary schools, mask wearing inside middle schools and high schools would be optional. for students and staff. However, for our bus riders, again, under that federal guidance that we would continue to mask while on any district transportation. Here's where I believe we have a safety net. We are calling this the return to masking threshold. So if a school building reaches 4% or greater exclusion and quarantine, the building would return, that particular building would return to full mask requirements. The building would then remain masked for at least 14 days and until the percentage of recommended exclusions and quarantines goes down to less than 4%. And again, I think this is, the safety net that we feel is important to have in place as we are recommending no masking for secondary. Contact tracing, we would continue to work with, Johnson County, JCDHE for contact tracing. Individuals that provide that COVID-19 vaccination record who have been exposed to that positive case will not be required to quarantine as long as they are asymptomatic. Let's see. Some of the cohorting and social distancing and group sizes, that remains the same from our initial recommendation in the fall. So again, recommending some of that cohorting and social distancing for our secondary and elementary schools. We would continue to, cohort for breakfast and lunch, and then recess and outdoor activities, we would not require that cohorting. Activities and athletics, that would fall under the CASHA guidance that is posted on the CASHA website. We would align those activities with what is currently taking place in other Johnson County school districts. The thing that we would do for these winter events that would be a little bit different is the winter events, which is any of our activities, any of our games, performances, those would start at the beginning of the winter sports season. And so that guidance we would want to begin right around the beginning of December. Some of the things with human resources, again, exclusion, asymptomatic staff will not be required to quarantine with proof of vaccination. And again, they would be sharing that information with their school nurse, and then that information would be stored with or kept with our human resources. Shawnee Mission School Districts continue to be responsible for notifying their supervisors of any exclusion, and staff will use their own accumulated leave and or access and available leave option for this winter mitigation plan as well. I believe that is the conclusion of the presentation, and we will stand for any questions and conversation.
Okay. I might just start off by asking for clarification on what the CASHA guidelines are for winter sports and activities, just so we know what's on the table with that.
Yeah.
Because that is structurally different than what we're implementing now.
Yeah, so they are, they strongly recommend that you, that unvaccinated people, if in attendance, mask, but they're not requiring it. So you don't have to have a mask if you're attending those events.
And there's no capacity.
And
there's
no-
no
and-
capacity
and no-
limitations.
Right.
So the change for that would be there could be full participation from an audience, and it would be
That is correct.
strongly
Indoors.
recommended, but
Yes.
there's no requirement.
That is correct.
And then I had one other question on that, as long as we're on it. that applies to the other activities, not just sports. So that would be like band performances,
Right.
orchestra
Yeah.
performances, and
Yeah,
that
it-
sort of
yeah,
thing.
that falls under performing arts as well, activities and athletics. So band, choir, orchestra, theater, all fall under that as well.
Well, I guess I'll start down here with Reverend Guy, and we can work our way around.
Just following up on that about Keisha. So those would begin at what time does the winter season?
So our winter sports our winter sports seasons actually began today.
Okay.
So that's tryouts, competitions, I believe, and Kent, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is Kent still here? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe right around December 1st is when our first competitions would begin.
That is correct, as well as the fine arts performances. Many of the holiday performances are
Yes.
in December, but we wouldn't have actual competitions that wouldn't begin until December.
Okay.
I do think we would have activities prior to that. I mean, I know Friday night I have tickets to a musical at Shawnee Mission West, so it would begin technically the way it's written, starting today if there were performances.
And so none of the students performing nor any of the attendees would have to wear a mask, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Stratton?
In the guidance around the elementary schools, we reference the county's mandate for elementary students. At the point to which they change their guidance, is it automatic that ours then reverts to what it would look like at the secondary? Or would we as a board or as administrative staff need to take action to change that?
So we had a lot of discussion about that, and we ended up recommending that the board would revisit it. If the county were to remove the mandate, then this board would revisit the elementary at that time.
Dr. Sinclair?
I have a couple of questions around access to vaccines, so I don't know who the best person to answer, but so our elementary school students are now eligible for vaccines, and that's currently mostly being done through pediatricians and that kind of thing. Do we know if there's backlogs, if maybe just speak a little bit about where the barriers are to implementation there, or if that's just rolling out?
Elizabeth Holshoe, Johnson County Department of Health and Environment, Director of Epidemiology. Good evening, board members, Dr. Hubbard. From what we can tell, there still seems to be a lot of interest in our community for pediatric vaccines. Speaking personally, I know that my pediatric office's phones went down because too many people were calling in, and they have been doing Saturday vaccine clinics. Our vaccine clinics at Johnson County Department of Health and Environment for 5 to 11-year-olds have booked out through, I believe, this coming week. We have a couple of appointments available the week of Thanksgiving. So there does seem to be a lot of interest and a lot of uptake within our community. As of last week, which was right after the implementation began, we only saw about 4% of our 5 to 11-year-olds, and in Johnson County we have about 56,000 5 to 11-year-olds. With that first dose, but we expect there to be some data lag in getting that into the system. And so we'll continue to watch it, and I expect those numbers to increase over time. It's probably worth saying, and Dr. Ziegler did an excellent job showing the uptake over time of those 12 to 17-year-olds. Our 12 to 17-year-olds in this county have about the same vaccination coverage level as our 18 and older, at least based on what the data from Kansas's system shows. So we're sitting almost at 60% of 12 to 17-year-olds being vaccinated, which is a generally very high number, but unfortunately that still means that 40% of them are unvaccinated. So.
Access to a vaccine for infants, do we have speculation about when that would?
So we were actually just having that conversation, Ms. Rebeck and I were outside, and I had heard in September that Pfizer was preparing to submit their data. I have not heard any updates on the 0 to 4 age group, but those trials have been ongoing, and so anticipate that at some point, hopefully in the nearish future.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. I will also say, too, that a number of pharmacies are also providing vaccines to the 5 to 11-year-olds in addition to the pediatric offices, Mercy, and us.
I have a few questions, and Dr. Holshoe, I'm sorry, most of them are probably going to be directed at you. Again, thank you for being here. JCDHE has not updated its guidance to the districts on risk mitigation as it pertains to mask wearing. Can you provide me with information? Because I know that there are folks in our community that would like to talk about what an off-ramp looks like. And can you tell me, or can you provide me with an idea of what an off-ramp would look like to JCDHE? And perhaps elaborate as to why the recommendation is not currently changing?
Absolutely. So first, we have not provided updated guidance around masking because our guidance remains the same. COVID mitigation protocols is a layered approach. I've talked about the Swiss cheese model previously in front of this board, where we have ventilation, social distancing, masking, vaccine, and really it takes all of that to prevent transmission. As of right now, we are still at a very high transmission level in Johnson County, and in fact, in the last 10 days, we have seen our case counts almost double. Over that time period, 11 days ago, we were at 77 per 100,000 cases. Today, we're at 139, and those cases seem to be going straight up. So I think that we are certainly not out of this. If we look around to states in our northern part of the country, also out to the west, as well as what's happening in Europe, there are some concerning signs that we may be in for another spike of COVID-19 as we head into winter months. What this looks like endemically is it probably will be a cyclical winter cold, and hopefully we won't have the impacts that we see currently in this pandemic phase. And as we are moving into holiday season, into winter, as people are coming inside, unmasking, we're all sort of getting a lot of people are getting complacent, taking the masks off, gathering. We are seeing increased transmission. So what an off-ramp looks like, I know that that's a big question that everybody has, and there's a lot of debate among epidemiologists as to what that off-ramp looks like. As of this point, we don't have national guidelines or something that says these are the metrics. What I can tell you is that we still have a lot of COVID-19 in our community. Our hospitals are just now coming down off of the last wave where they were getting strapped and we were talking about ER diversions. They are having a shortage of staffing, which impacts directly the beds, as well as an increase in individuals with acute other illnesses that need to be taken care of that maybe didn't get taken care of in the first 20 months of this pandemic. So I think at this point, we are not out of this. What is encouraging, though, and I think what will lead us to the off-ramp is 5 to 11 vaccines, which I, as a parent of a 4-year-old who turns 5 next week, and my child's vaccine is scheduled on his birthday, I'm overjoyed by this. That's the first big step. Getting 0 to 4 vaccinated as well, because your students do not live in a bubble. Your high school students probably have siblings who are in elementary school and maybe down to daycares, right? And so if daycare kids are not protected, then it has the potential to impact your elementary schools and your high schools and vice versa. Additionally, there's some great promise with some new antiviral medications, a couple of pills, one by Merck and one by Pfizer. So this would be the equivalent of Tamiflu during influenza season, where if taken early, it can reduce the severity of symptoms, which keeps people out of the hospital. So I think that's a key piece to how we get an off-ramp. But at the end of the day, we need to see cases that are not in the high transmission or even substantially high transmission level. Even though I think people have sort of progressed to the fact that COVID is sort of over and we don't see it, it is still very much present and very much transmitting, and we are still having kids and adults end up in the hospital with COVID. And then with our youth, we have seen hospitalizations due to MIS-C, the multi-inflammatory syndrome in children, even within this county.
So one of our educators spoke tonight about the concerns for the younger students or younger children who are not yet able to access the vaccine, but you just spoke to that. But another concern that was raised to me by someone before this meeting was the impact on pregnant women and how we have perhaps due to the demographics of who we employ, large numbers of pregnant people or potentially pregnant people in our buildings. Can you speak to, are they protected if they have been vaccinated? Are pregnant women protected if they have been vaccinated? And then do they still have higher risk even if they're vaccinated or not? Is that something that we would need to be aware of for staffing concerns?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question. I will say that unvaccinated pregnant women, pregnant individuals are at an exceptionally high risk if they contract COVID. The stories are are heartbreaking and numerous of individuals who contract COVID-19 during their pregnancy, end up giving birth early. Most of the time the child survives, but a lot of times the mom does not and does not go home with her newborn. And I think for me that is just absolutely devastating. Vaccines are safe and effective, and in fact, all of the national organizations, ACOG, CDC, all recommend pregnant women get vaccinated or get vaccinated prior to becoming pregnant. With the vaccine, it is very effective in preventing that severe outcome in pregnant women, as well as other individuals. But pregnancy is considered a very high risk factor for severe outcomes, especially in unvaccinated individuals.
Thank you. Ms. Borgman, do you have any questions at this time?
Hi, I do. Thank you so much. My first question is for Dr. Hubbard. Dr. Hubbard, why do you and your team feel comfortable making this recommendation to the board?
So several reasons. One, as we presented the plans in August, we talked very clearly about especially discussing 7th through 12th grade. If you'll remember our original proposal, we had one without 7th through 12 being optional masking, and then one with K-12 being masked. And one of the big factors that we really talked about was that once the vaccine was available for all students, that we would remove that 7 through 12 masking requirement, assuming the numbers went down. And so those two things have happened. The numbers have gone down, and our elementary students, by January 3rd, most will have the ability to have been vaccinated. And so because we said that publicly, being very transparent, we felt like we needed to bring it back into the boardroom for the discussion again. Additionally, as you all know, our neighbors in Johnson County have all done this, and so it just makes the enforcement at 7th through 12th grade exceptionally difficult. And if you walk through our high schools now, the struggle is real. I mean, our teachers and our principals are fighting this fight every day. You all get the emails from both sides of this, right? And so those principals and teachers are seeing that as well. But I think it's going to become exceptionally difficult to enforce with our neighbors having made that change. And they're making the change even more quickly than what we are recommending. We felt strongly that we wanted elementary students to have the access to the vaccine before we were to make that recommendation. Is there anything you all would add?
Jamie, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, my second question is, and thank you, Dr. Hubbard, I appreciate it. My second question is just speaking about, you referenced our neighbors. I know DeSoto went to mask optional in its secondary on October 20th, I believe. And have they gone back to masking? What have the rates been like?
So they have not gone back to masking, and I haven't spoken to the superintendent this past week, but prior to that, they really have pretty minimal numbers, and they do have a pretty high vaccination rate. It's a little bit higher than ours in all transparency, but their test to stay has been very positive, and I believe their numbers are exceptionally low. Elizabeth might be able to confirm that more so.
Honestly, I don't know their numbers off the top of my head, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you. I was trying to pull it up.
Okay. Thank you. I think, do they have a similar policy in that if rates get above a certain percentage, a certain threshold, that they will go back to masking? Is that?
Yes, all the schools in the county do, maybe with the exception of Spring Hill. And they all look a little bit differently too. They're not all 4%. There's one that's 3%. There's one school district that takes attendance into consideration as well. And we landed with a recommendation of 4%.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate the information and the discussion. And thank you, Elizabeth Bolshu, for joining us tonight.
Ms. Goodburn?
My only question was about this return to masking threshold, the 4%. Where do we come up with that? I mean, how did we get that number?
Christy, you want to?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So looking at our cases that we've seen throughout this year, looking at where we've had hotspots, what we would consider hotspots, and then also looking at our attendance. When we looked at 4% seems a number that we would have concern about based on the data and the trends that we've seen this year, but also we looked at our testing capacity. We don't want to get to a point where we're too far down a road where we can't support the testing needed in terms of positive cases and then potentially those cases that are exposures. We want to be able to maintain the testing that we're reporting right now, that we will have the ability to stand up and do it well. And that goes back to my concern I expressed before when we talked about testing, is being able to sustain it.
And by attendance, then you're including people that, or students that can't go to school because they're sick for other reasons. Is that what you're saying too? That it's 4% exclusion in quarantine. Is it just students that have been excluded because of COVID?
Yes.
Or if they've got a cold or the flu?
No, we would look at those that we know are positive or presumed positive because we know when speaking with them or working with the county that they have been exposed to a positive case with their symptoms developing that it's likely they are presumed positive for COVID.
Okay.
Ms. Embry?
I'm going to first admit to having a very big struggle with this plan today. I feel like this has been just a series of difficult decisions for us to make as a board. And when I first read this, I thought it seemed like an entirely reasonable set of guidance for us to be suggesting. I really like that we have a return to masking threshold. But I spent a bulk of this day like panicking about having to take a vote on this tonight and asking a number of my friends and neighbors that have middle and high school students what their thoughts and feelings were. And the number one question people asked me was if we knew by building what kind of vaccination rates we have. And I think the answer to that is no, but I wanted to ask it here and also ask what it would take to be able to have that information.
So we only have it by zip code, so it's sort of an educated guess. I mean, if you sort of chunk it, but we have a lot of zip codes that cross over as well. To know by building, we would have to, I hate to use the word require, but ask for immunizations. But we're doing that anyway, but not everybody turns them in because there's not a requirement to do so. So to know for sure, we would have to require the proof for those that are willing to give it to us. Now, as kids are exposed and want to avoid quarantine, and they show vaccination to avoid quarantine, then we document it. So we know some of them, but we do not have an accurate number by building. Shelby, accurate? Okay.
Well, it looks like we're circling all the way around. So go ahead, Reverend Guy.
A couple of thoughts. I too have lots of mixed emotions about this decision. One of the things I think we need to acknowledge is that we do have students in this district that are younger than 5. We have a pre-K program. And so they don't even have the option of being vaccinated yet. So I want to make sure we're clear on where we are with our pre-K kids because, as Dr. Hubbard said we would revisit this when the 5 to 12-year-olds had an opportunity to be vaccinated, but pre-K still have not. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. And I'm very conflicted about the Keisha stuff. My kids were in band, and I'm just imagining that the band students are going to have to wear masks to have the rehearsal for the band concert with no one in the room. And then that night, the room is going to be filled with people who are not masked, and the students take their masks off. And that just seems ludicrous to me, that we would tell the students during the school day when no one else is watching them in the auditorium that they have to keep their masks. I just think we're going to have chaos if we do that, because the students are going to know when they actually do the concert, they don't have to wear a mask and nobody else will be wearing a mask. And I think it's already difficult in the high schools. I think once we go there, I don't know that we can hold those floodgates closed until January 3rd. And so I have a lot of concerns about that. I like that we have been the slow and steady district in Johnson County, and we want to take our time, and we want to make sure we've got lots of information, and so I can be okay with us waiting until January 3rd, because if things do start trending up, then the board can always change their mind and keep masks on. But yeah, I think if we start today or tomorrow following Keisha, it's going to be very chaotic. So I don't really have a question. Those are just my thoughts.
Mr. Stratton?
No other questions.
Thank you. Dr. Sinclair?
The return to masking threshold at 4%, is that based on students and staff in the building? So it's all individuals in the building, not just students? So if we have a bunch of teachers who are sick, that doesn't count in, or staff or something like that?
We'd base it on total positive cases.
So inclusive of both students and staff?
I think we're going to have to base it only on student, because that'll be the absentee data that we have from Dr. Grumman. He's the one who's providing us with our attendance data, and then we'll pull out from the attendance, all attendance, we will pull out the exclusions to get to our 4%. Does that make sense?
So it'll just be students, not...
It's going to have to be, yeah, because we aren't going to have, Dr. Grumman's not going to have staff in his attendance data.
Okay. Appreciate that explanation. Okay, and then for the test to stay enforcement, the test to stay program, so that is an expectation that anybody who's doing test to stay would be wearing a mask, and that's honor code, basically?
You know, different people, we've had a lot of discussion about that, but no, I think it would be better, it would be bigger than honor code. We would have some list of students that would be required to mask, and hopefully it's not going to, like for
Right.
example, this week, it's 8 high school students. So if our numbers remain, then it's pretty easy to monitor. And the other schools, I can only speak for DeSoto right now, but they still have about 22% of kids masking.
Okay, that's helpful information, thank you. The last piece, I think, is a thought building on to what Reverend Guy was talking about in terms of Keisha and the implementation of that being now versus January 3rd or 4th when we're talking about everyone back at school. So the big difference to me there is one is voluntary and one is mandated. You have to go to school. So in the hours that you have to go to school, you're wearing your mask and you're adhering to a higher threshold of risk mitigation protocols. And then when it comes time to engage in those extracurricular volunteer activities, then it becomes, so what could theoretically be, right, a student,
And so,
be in a band, and then you're kind of meeting that threshold of when everyone has to be there, and then when you get into the extracurricular period of time, when it's voluntary, whether it's band or sports.
yeah, if you think about it, we've
That
been
comes
doing
off.
doing that already. If you think about it, we've had sports competitions where kids are competing without masks, right? So during the school day, they're masked. Then when they're doing their activity or sport, they're unmasked. So that's
Well,
And it's
but
been
I think,
outside until.
yeah, the difference I would see with that, though,
Except for
was with
except for
band and orchestra, you're graded on your performances. So you do have to attend if you're in band or orchestra.
We did talk about that, and if that were a concern for a student or their parents, that we would provide alternatives.
Okay, so they would not have to attend. if they-
that would not
an
be counted
alternative for
against
that.
them. They would be given an alternative opportunity.
Okay, that would be useful. Because then the other portion that's different is that we would have indoor audiences not without a capacity limit, not masked. So that is different than what we're doing now.
And I just want to reiterate, between December 1 and January 3rd, there are going to be pretty minimal, there may not be any for a lot of activities, but there will be some for, especially sports. You may run into, 3 or 4 games in December?
Yep.
Did you have another follow-up, Mary? Because I cut you off and I apologize.
No, I think.
Okay.
Oh.
No, I was asking Mary, but I'll ask you in just a second, Jamie. So I am also really chewing on this. for lack of a better word, because I recognize the difficulties with enforcement for staff, especially for the CASHA guidelines, because, you know, having folks come in from outside the district who might give our administrators grief or make things difficult for them. Enforcement of folks from outside the district, I think that could be a tall task. And I worry about putting some of our leaders in that position and what that might mean for them. So I understand the practicalities of wanting to be uniform with the other districts in the activities that we all participate jointly in. I think one of the things I'm chewing on is that we are at the beginning of an upward tick that's small now, perhaps, but it's still an upward tick. We had plateaued and now we're potentially going up. And I understand that this, for the rest of it, for inside the buildings would not take effect until January 3rd. So that gives time not only for little ones to get vaccinated with that second dose, it also, if you got your child who's older vaccinated when they were first available at the end of May and early June, it also potentially gets you that opportunity to get your secondary student the booster, because they'll be at that 6-month window. So if they qualify for a booster, you can get the booster in. I think my hesitation would be, we waited in July to have that conversation about what we were going to do until we had like the freshest data we could have before school started. And it seems somewhat premature to make a decision today when case rates could change over the next month, one way or the other. And because the community transmission or where we're at rates-wise, it did go down and then plateaued and then now is going back up. So I'm struggling with just the timing of it with regards to where contagion rates may be in 4 weeks. And so that's where my thought process is right now. And then I know, Jamie, you said you didn't have any further questions at this time. Ms. Goodburn, do you have any further questions? No? Okay. And Ms. Embry?
I have 2 additional questions,
Yeah,
if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
My first question is for Shelby, if that's okay, Shelby, because you're in closest contact with our school nurses. Any of these changes are going to impact the day-to-day work that your folks are doing inside of our buildings. So I would love to hear your thoughts about, in particular, masking for middle and high school students, if you think how that's going to impact our nurses.
Well, because we wrote into the plan that we will not be, the nurses will cooperate with the county health department to the level that they are capable, I don't think anything is changing a lot for them. And because we have utilized MAUD laboratories as a third party, that also takes that burden off of our school nurses. The nurses will step up, whatever decision is made, honestly.
They keep on doing that. Thank you. My second question is probably better for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, you know I have enough of a public health background to be dangerous. So I have been checking the dashboard so diligently for like a year and a half now, and I noticed it has changed to really highlight cases and vaccination rates. But my question is, and we've all talked a number of times about case rates, as COVID becomes more endemic rather than pandemic, do we need to keep on obsessing with case rates, or do we need to be focusing more on hospitalization and death? Because it seems like we're seeing a small upward trend in cases, which is not great, but hospitalizations continue to go down. So I guess my question is, what is the metric I should now be obsessing over? Please.
So I'll be honest, right before I came in here, I was reading your local epidemiologist, which is an epi who really does a big data dive every day. And that was actually something she posed was, do we still count cases? Here's what my opinion is on this. With vaccines being as effective as they are, we will not see the same proportion of hospitalizations and deaths as we did in the first wave compared to the number of cases, right? That's math. However, I'm a little concerned about doing away completely with case counts because hospitalizations and deaths are those lagging indicators, which I've talked about before with you all, where you're going to see cases start to rise, and then you're going to see hospitalizations in a couple of weeks. And if this most recent wave that we had in September showed us anything, is that can still put, even though it's not the same proportion relative to the number of cases, it can still put a tremendous stress on our hospital systems. And so for me, I am still very concerned about our hospital capacity, particularly as we move into winter months. If we see a bad flu season, which we're still not sure about what that will look like, in addition to, again, patients who may be delayed care, we could very much be putting our hospitals at a stressing point. So yes, cases become less of an important metric because we can have breakthrough cases, so individuals who are vaccinated but aren't severely ill, but that to me is still the best way to have an idea of what's coming on a hospitalization front, which I think is still a very important key.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Are there any further questions at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I guess we can do is we'll get a motion. We'll seek a motion for it in its entirety, I guess, and then yeah, we'll seek a motion for both plans together, and then if for some reason, we'll just work from there.
I move to approve both plans.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stratton.
I'll second Goodburn.
Thank you, Ms. Goodburn. I think we need to probably roll call this. Or, in the alternative, I could make a motion to table this, and we could pick it up again next month when we get additional data.
A motion's on the table.
Motion's on the table. So if there's a second for that, we can do that, and if there's not, we can.
Sarah seconded.
My motion's on the table.
Oh, okay. No, but can I not make a motion to table this while we're doing that, or no? You have to vote on the first one? Okay. Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, then let's do a roll call vote on this.
Okay. Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
There's a motion on the table, and there's a second. You can see if there's any amendments.
Okay. Are there any amendments to it as it stands right now? Okay. Yes, Reverend Guy.
I would like to amend it so that the CASA guidance begins on January 3rd as well. Following CASA guidelines begins on January 3rd.
Okay. Is there a second for Laura's proposed amendment? I would be willing to second that amendment, Reverend Guy. So now I will see if we can vote on your amendment, and we can roll call that. And Terry, can you roll call Laura Guy's amendment to put that guidance to hold off until January 3rd?
Reverend Guy?
Yes.
Mr. Stratton?
No.
Dr. Sinclair?
Sorry, I'm struggling with this.
It's okay.
Dr. Sinclair, while you're thinking, I want to point out one thing just to make sure everyone is clear. So on Monday night, I could go to a girls' basketball game. I'm a Shawnee Mission East parent. I go to a girls' basketball game at Blue Valley North. And I would not be required to mask, nor would my student who's in this cheering section. And then on Tuesday night, I would return home to Shawnee Mission East, where we would be requiring not only our parents, but everybody else who comes to visit there. And so that's true for at least the metro area. The only school in the Sunflower League I'm not sure about would be Lawrence. So I just want to be clear that that's what that looks like.
So I suppose I can't make a comment. Okay, so I'm just thinking about in voting no on the amendment, it puts a huge onus on every student participating in an activity or a sport to wear their mask above their nose until all our elementary kids have a chance to get vaccinated. So I just would like to, so I'll vote no on the amendment, but I think that, there are a lot of secondary students who are really pushing the mask and wearing it below their nose, and I really think if there is going to be this, this going with CASHA, that I would ask our students really to adhere to during the school day, really keeping their mask up during this next couple of months for our elementary school students.
Ms. Ousley?
This is on Laura's amendment, and I will vote yes for that.
Ms. Borgman?
No.
Mrs. Goodburn?
No.
And Ms. Embry?
No.
Okay, so Laura's amendment fails, and we're back to the mitigation guidance and the CASHA guidance as a whole, as a package. Are there any other amendments to the package from any other board members? Because I would bring an amendment to move the 4% threshold to 3% to be in line with Blue Valley, because I know Blue Valley set that threshold at 3%.
I'll second.
Okay, and we'll
Was that Ms. Embry?
roll, yeah, that was Jessica, and then we'll roll call that one too.
Are we allowed to get any information from the staff, the difference between 3% and 4% for the staff?
Of course.
I think it boils down to the percentage of kids in a building, and we can manage it at 3 or at 4. I think you're going to see, you could potentially, especially in really small schools, 3% is 3%, but 3% at Santa Fe Trail Elementary, you get one family, the school's mask may go back on, right? Where 3% at Shawnee Mission South is, you're not going to see it nearly as quickly, right? Just by the numbers, so we can manage 3 or 4.
Okay. Reverend Guy?
Yes.
Mr. Stratton?
No.
Dr. Sinclair?
Yes.
Ms. Ousley?
Yes.
Ms. Borgman?
No.
Ms. Goodburn?
No.
And Ms. Embry?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think the ayes had that one. Okay. So now we're back on the package as a whole again. And if there are no further amendments, we'll vote on the package as a whole. Ready? All right. I'm not seeing any further. Okay.
Okay. Reverend Guy?
No.
Mr. Stratton? Dr. Sinclair?
Yes.
Ms. Ousley?
No.
Ms. Borgman?
Yes.
Ms. Goodburn?
Yes.
And Ms. Embry?
Yes.
Okay. So the ayes have that. What's the final count on that, Terry?
5 to 2.
5 to 2. Okay. I just want to say thank you very much to this board. I know everybody's really struggled with this. I really appreciate everybody's perspectives and willingness to really weigh things and think about it, and to the staff for continually having to work on heavy things. And then also to both Shelby and Dr. Holshoe for being here this evening. I appreciate your time, because this was at the end of an already long meeting, and so you had to wait for a long time for us to get to you. So thank you for that. I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. My computer has logged me out, but I will double check. Thank you. We are on board member comments. So I will start with you, Ms. Embry, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would just, this was a hard conversation. Thank you all for engaging in it. On a completely personal note, what I kept thinking about is I have 2 elementary age kids myself, one of whom is actually not old enough for a vaccine yet because he's just 4, and he is in pre-K. And last week, his delightful pre-K teacher wanted to do emotion charades with the kids, and she couldn't do it because of the masks. So it was just a stark reminder to me that these masks have really good upsides. They absolutely have helped us in a big way through this pandemic, but they are not without cost. So I was really trying to weigh all of those costs and benefits tonight. and thinking of my 4-year-old trying to act surprised when you can't see the bottom half of his face, which really didn't look like anything. So thank you all for the conversation.
Ms. Cooper?
No comments tonight.
Ms. Borgman?
No comments other than thank you to my fellow board members for this discussion.
Thank you. I just have one comment, not related to anything we've discussed this evening. Dr. Hubbard and I attended a presentation from the state's treasurer about some of the services that they offer on their webpage at Shawnee Mission North. And they have a scholarship search engine for students. They can go in, they can make an account, and they can put in all of the things that makes them unique, what they're interested in, what they're studying, religious affiliation, clubs, sports, all of that. And you can search, and it'll pop up a list of all the scholarships nationwide that might be applicable to you that you can apply for. And they were pulling up scholarships where they were saying, hey, these are only $2,000 or maybe it's only $1,500, but nobody's applying for them. So if you apply for this, you're like, you could get it. And I walked out of there thinking, oh, well, we are going to do some scholarship shopping when I get home. And the other thing that he presented on that I thought was really interesting and would be a great opportunity, I'm sure, for students in our district, is that Kansas offers the 529 accounts, and I think everyone is aware of that, just like all states do. But there is a special kids 529 account for families who are in lower income brackets, and if you sign up for that 529 account with the state, they will match what you're putting in it up to $600 the first year. The state will. And only 300 students get to participate in every congressional district. And our congressional district apparently has a very low participation rate for that. And so I would just like to let Shawnee Mission students know that if you are planning for your college experience, and if you can afford, you can open one of those accounts for only $25, the state will match your $25 when you open that account up to, I believe it's $600. And that's, if you are a working student and you were here tonight and you were talking about how you have to work until 10 o'clock at night, it's going to benefit you to get that money. So I wanted to make sure people had an opportunity to check out that webpage. And I know it's not anything to do with anything else we discussed, but it was such a good piece of information. I wanted to make sure everybody have it. And I will once again say thank you to my fellow board members. Dr. Sinclair. Mr. Stratton?
I just wanted to acknowledge that this is our first board meeting since the elections of a week ago, and I want to say thank you to the community. We had 25% of our registered voters come out. We shouldn't really be cheering for that. It should be a lot higher than that, but in an off-year election, as they say, relative to the other cycles, 25% is pretty good. The other part is that there was a lot of conversation at all levels on the ballot. So I think there was an incredible amount of participation and interest for a whole host of reasons in the role of a school board member and in the role of a city council, in the role of a county commission and a county community college trustee. I hope that we continue the open dialogue and the engagement and the information on all of these local bodies, because I think it's important, because the governance that's taking place at each of these levels is important. There was a lot of interest, and I hope those that got involved or were observing stay involved. And then I like to always point out that I ran for several offices over the years and was not successful several times. And so for those that step forward at all levels and for whatever reason weren't elected this time, stay engaged, because we'll continue to need good people coming forward. And lastly, I'll say thank you to my board peers who said, let's do it one more time. This has been a tricky time to be a school board member, so thank you for saying yes again and walking through that process. Congratulations.
Thank you. Reverend Guy?
Well, I also wanted to address the election and say congratulations to Heather Owsley and Mary Sinclair for winning re-election. But as Mr. Stratton just said, thank you mostly for stepping up and being willing to run again. I know, especially after the last couple of years, that was not an easy decision to make, and so I applaud you for being willing to commit another 4 years to serve on the school board. I also want to officially welcome April Boyd Nerona, who is here tonight, but I can't see her because she's behind the podium. Hi, April. I'm so excited that she is going to be sitting on this board representing the Shawnee Mission West area, and I just want to acknowledge that her election is a small piece of Shawnee Mission history, and to my knowledge, she will be the first person of color to sit on this school board, and I think that's amazing. I think, yeah, we can clap for that. I'm so grateful to her for stepping up to run, and I'm so grateful to the Shawnee Mission West area for choosing her as the person who will sit in this seat. So I'll have more to say in my last school board meeting next month, but I do welcome April to this board, and I know that she will find lots of support and help from the other board members up here. And she'll have lots of questions, but there are lots of smart people up here who can help her answer those questions. So thank you to those of you who ran, and it makes it easier for me to step down knowing that good people will continue the work we've been doing together. So thank you.
Thank you. There is no executive session after this, so this concludes our meeting for this evening. Everyone have a good night.